that was a very unexpected blast from the past. Hello friends, I am so excited because today I'm gonna go see Clown in a Cornfield, which is the cheesiest title. I know, and you know, but I also know that this is based on a book that so many people love. I have not read, but so many people love, and I'm so excited to witness this story. So this is pegged as a dark comedy slasher, and it is about a fading Midwestern town in which Friendo, the clown, is a symbol of a bygone success. But unfortunately for this town, he reemerges, but he's not the same. As I said, people love the book. It's a young adult book that this is based on, but this is an R-rated version, which it depends on your rating system where you are. But let's just say that this is an adult version. They're going for bloody, they're going for intense, they're going for graphic. I'm also excited because this is directed by Eli Craig, who did Little Evil, Zombieland, Tucker and Dale versus Evil. So I'll be interested to know how much comedy is in this versus how much gore and how they overlap. So I'll let you know, spoiler free, so you'll know whether it's worth your time and suits your personal taste to go check out in the cinema. I'm gonna be real with you guys. It is the 4th of April while I'm recording this. I'm going to a media screening that is happening way before the film comes out. The reason I'm telling you that is because it's not the fun popcorn-filled adventure that we normally have, but also I do want to say that the film currently is sitting at a 7.7 on IMDb with 132 reviews. So it is getting great reviews. So I'm very excited to go in without knowing anything and see how it works for someone who did not follow the book. I'm sure by the end of this, I'll let you know whether I want to read the book. Enough talk, let's go check out Clown in a Cornfield. I never thought I'd be saying that title out loud. Let's go check it out and see if it's worth the hype, and hopefully book lovers will also be impressed. Let's go. It just started raining. I'm so excited because it's like the perfect spooky weather, especially if you have to see a horror movie during the day. This is what you want. Except now I have to do a mad dash to get in. It's raining. I know some of you guys are going to be thrilled about this film, and I'm so excited to be able to set those expectations because that was so much fun, but it's not for everyone, like all movies, but that was a very unexpected blast from the past. It felt like I was back in the early 2000s or 90s watching a slasher, a standalone slasher that has just been released in the cinema. It was able to mimic that stylization in such an interesting way, an authentic way, and it didn't care that it was cheesy and silly and goofy. It really played into it, and it was self-aware without trying to be too clever, and I think it is a movie that a lot of people have been craving for a long time. I do have good points and bad points though, so let me get to it. This movie is about a father and daughter who have just moved into this small flyover town in America, and when they arrive, something is already off, you can tell, and there's a huge friction going on, especially with this particular crowd that the girl falls in with. And like all towns, they have traditions, and these new cool kids have made a tradition of their own, flipping the script on an icon, an old clown classic called Friendzo. The film setup is really interesting, and I think what caught me off guard at the start was the cinematography. I know the director's past films have been very slick and the grading is very smooth. Even though there's some blood and gore, it just didn't feel like it was the same, I guess, trend we're seeing with modern film right now in the cinema. It didn't feel that well polished, and also a lot of the wider shots, I mean, a lot of it's set in a cornfield, they weren't these grand, epic moments, or there wasn't many crane shots or dollies. There were some, but a lot of it was really close and tight, and so it felt more like a budget film. So going in, it does feel very small screen, which I was not expecting at all, and it caught me off guard. But as soon as the setup happened with the characters and it played into the most cliche stereotypes for slashers, I started to understand how the film was setting itself up, and it really does play that to the T. It's very kitschy. It's all one-liners, all of the angst within the teens. It's just so stereotypical, but in the funnest way possible, because it is a film for horror fans, and I really appreciated it for that. And I think that's actually a reason it stands out, because it's playing so well into the palm of the hands of horror fans. I felt like I was watching I Know What You Did Last Summer or Scream or something like that. Maybe not of that caliber, but it's a classic standalone horror movie for the first time that I had maybe missed. Maybe something like Bloody Valentine or something like that, that was kitschy and silly, and the characters were just, you know, angsty teen, the cool preppy girl who's a little bit mean, the standoffish weirdo. Like, it plays every single one. The town sheriff. And it really had that fun element where it was self-aware of that, and I do think a lot of that probably translates from the book. It has that same quality, and I know, I'm sorry to say Stephen King, but it has that same quality that, you know, when Stephen King books are translated to the big screen, they're very small town characters, very one-dimensional, but you play out a big story within that. It is like watching a caricature of a slasher, but it still has all the fun parts, and it's so fun to laugh along with. It also does really well to mimic the 90s. It is set in present day, but they call back to the 90s, and they explain in the film that a lot of the town seems like it's stuck in the 90s, and I really loved that idea because it plays true to that. It's not all, I mean, a lot of it does have newer technology, but it's not in the way. I find a lot of new slasher films, they try and incorporate too much of that, and I think that this plays more on the nostalgic factor for, or I guess like meets in the middle between a couple of generations of horror fans. So I feel like it kind of blends it all together for people. It is kitschy, it is silly, it's a little bit goofy, but I loved that about it. It really felt like something different, and I think if you go in knowing that, it's going to be a good time. This is a movie you'll want to go see with a bunch of friends and laugh your head off. I cannot wait to see this when it officially opens here in the cinemas, because with a packed house, it would be so funny. I felt myself laughing out loud when everyone else was silent, because I was only in the cinema with 5 other people. In saying all of that, because of this stylization, I wondered if it was going to open up and be some kind of, I guess, leveled in a world within another horror movie. It was so stereotypical, but it is exactly what you see is what you get, and it's just a fun ride for that. It really satisfied kind of like the Fear Street within me. It feels like that, you know, it's young adult, so it is exactly what the book is. The book is young adult, and it transfers that to the big screen. What I will say is, although it is completely consistent with tone throughout, I don't think that every scene is that valuable. I think it could have been tighter and more punchier, and there are lulls in it. I actually thought the second half was a lot more funny than the first half. And like I said, if it had a couple of more like epic shots in it in terms of really making that town big and large, it felt really small and condensed and like it was made for small screen. So I felt like there was a couple of more elements that they could really punch up that would have made it a better experience in the theater. I also thought it was really interesting what it did with music, because there's a lot of bridging music that we have in teen slashers, especially from the 90s, but they use a lot of hits back then, and here I feel like they use a lot of unknown music to try and blur, I guess, the decade and really have it more of a timeless film, but it comes off a little bit AI-ish music-wise, especially because if a scene starts that has to have a certain type of song, they bring it in, they push it up, and then they bring it back down, and it kind of is meant to set the tone for that scene, and then we move on to another scene and they do it with the same music, and I felt like it wasn't very organic or original to the film. Something that also just felt like small TV, and I think could have been changed pretty easily, especially if they had an iconic score that went throughout, or just some cool songs that would have given the film more of an individual feel. It just felt like there were filler songs. I know that's a really strange comment to make, but I don't make that comment usually. I don't really have a problem with the song choice, but it really stood out to me how obvious it was that they were bringing songs in to match some kind of tone, and I just didn't feel like it fit. It was almost too kitschy. But again, if it's self-aware, I don't have a problem with it being kitschy, as long as it knows what it is, and it does know what it is. Let's talk about the gore though, because we talked about how much comedy is in it, and the comedy is kind of like self-deprecating comedy on slashers. It is playing into everything that you already know, and I wouldn't say it's meta by any means. It's definitely not down that route of, you know, Scream, but it's almost there, and I think the one-liners were so obvious and funny and silly like that. But with the gore, that is where it gets interesting, because I was told that this film, it obviously comes from the text of a young adult book, but it's meant to be dialed all the way up with these really intense kills, and it does have them. I will say I was very impressed with a lot of it, but I think that they really steered back from a lot of the reveals and the details, and that was what I was interested in. There's one moment that someone is, you know, done in a grisly way, and you don't get to really see the reveal, and later you get to see more intense reveals. So I was wondering why they've cut certain elements out, and I'm sure there is probably answers to that, but I was kind of let down. You know, when you watch things like Hereditary and you're waiting for a certain scene to happen, it does happen eventually. I was hoping those things would happen, and some of them don't happen. So I will say the gore was great, but I wanted some more details or just moments where it lingered and it gave the audience the time to soak it up. This is one of those films when there's gore and you're just laughing and enjoying the moments, and you're like, hell yeah to that kill, and especially in a crowd. That's this kind of film. If you love watching that kind of stuff with a certain friend, this is your film to go see with them. This is definitely a what you see is what you get film. I thought it may end up being more. I don't really want to talk about how predictable it was, but, you know, it got there. But it very much satisfied a craving that I didn't know I had to watch a nostalgic, just straight up slasher in 2025 and just enjoy it and not take anything so seriously. We talk about popcorn horror all the time, but there's always these different levels of grief and fear and trauma, and this film does not have that. It seems like it may at the start, and I'm sure the book probably goes into that a lot more, but it really does keep it kind of surface level, especially with the characters the whole time. It's just a goofy, fun movie, and I think it being self-aware in that, that's perfect. That's great. That's exactly what you want on a Friday night at the cinemas. Or it's a great palate cleanser. I know I keep saying this, but it really did feel like I was back in like the 2000s watching just a fun slasher. Just a fun slasher that wasn't trying to be too clever. In saying all of that, it's not a thinker, it's not a deep pondering film that you'll be able to talk about for ages. It's just a fun time out at the cinema. And as I said, it did feel like it went in and out a little bit in the middle. I didn't quite lose me, but there was just a lot of detail going on for a very straightforward story. And when everything came out, everything's very well explained in this film. There's not much to it, but pure fun. And that's great. And I also think when there are so many details, it's usually because it is coming from a book, coming from a broader picture, and trying to kind of narrow it down and keep everyone happy at the end of the day. I'd be very interested to see what people who have read the book say. I actually really do want to read the book now. And I think it's just a really fun ride full of fun characters. And I really love the lead actress. She played the grungy, angsty teen so well and just carried it like all of the 90s badass scream queens do. So good for her. Anyway, I was really close to giving this film an 8 out of 10, but I do feel like because of some of the reasons, the cinematography, the music, and just some of the dips, I'm going to go with a 7. And I highly recommend watching this one in the cinemas if you like nostalgic horror. And if you're into watching a horror movie that is just straight up, what you see is what you get, you're not looking for too many twists and turns, just a whodunit slasher with clowns, yeah, go see it. I don't want to say it's a bridging horror, but again, it is for young adults, but check out your ratings in your area. If you do have a cousin or family member who is of age, don't want to traumatize anyone, this would be a nice entry to horror as well for them. At least it's a good one to start, and then you can go back and introduce, you know, Scream and stuff to people, because this one feels so timeless in a certain way. It's almost a weird film to bridge those generations. Originality, I would give it like a 4 out of 10, and for scare, I would give it like a 5 out of 10 just for the gore. I don't think it's that scary. They definitely do a Jack in the Box, but I think that they're pretty good with maintaining the balance of jump scares and actual gore. I think it's more gore than any jump scares. It's not that kind of film. Anyway, I'm so glad I got to see this today, and I can't wait to see what you guys think. Let me know down below, and these are some videos I worked on lately if you want to come hang out with me, and I'll talk to you all very soon. Stay safe and stay spooky and stay away from cornfields and clowns. Bye, friends.